Okay, hello everyone. This is Pato Sapir speaking. We're gonna give about 3 minutes for some more people in our team to join. And we are going to get started with our second session of Salesforce Marketing Cloud training. So I'm gonna go on mute and we'll wait a little bit. Okay, we're gonna get started. Hope everyone is doing great. This is session 2 of a Marketing Cloud training series. If you didn't attend session 1, we cover a lot of the very basics of AMPScript and a little of very basic Marketing Cloud. So if you don't have any, I saw a question there popping up. If you don't have a lot of programming experience, or if you didn't attend the first session, you might be okay. Still, we're gonna do some basic things, but it's gonna be a little more advanced. So this is more, if you're a web developer, or if you've already been to session 1 and you've been practicing a little bit last week, you should be okay. So I wouldn't leave or anything like that. So today, slide 2, a couple of housekeeping items just as session 1. Send any questions to the webinar chat window. So it's going to ask them, around, at the end. We're gonna try to leave some time at the end to answer questions. I don't want to commit to something, like I said before, that I can't, I don't want to promise something that I can't commit. So, if we have already a direct relationship, you can send me questions, but if not, I recommend using one of these 3 links: Stack Exchange, the Trailblazer community, or the developer community. Material for these sessions and future sessions, such as the deck that we're going to see today, example code and files are going to be uploaded into the GitHub repository that we have here. So we have a folder for each session. And session 1, you have all the data files that we need, for this session also, as well as the deployment manager snapshot that you can use. It's a really great app to deploy all the data extensions that we use for this exercise. If you don't know how to use Deployment Manager, I would recommend watch the recording for session 1. We're gonna upload this in YouTube soon. So I'll send a link, we'll send a link over email to everyone who attended with the recording. So the agenda for today is just do a quick recap of session 1 on what we we learned, from the first session about AMPScript. And then we're gonna move towards a use case right away. We were working on a use case of our fantasy store called Football Shop. And so we're gonna do a little more in the use case. We're gonna do looking up relational data and display product information. And then we're gonna do a for loop statement to display event information email. So we're gonna do an email that usually a lot of these use cases come across when you're building dynamic emails. I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about a couple of tips for AMPScript, creating AMPScript functions, kind of. Even though that's not available, there is a way to do it, sort of. And then how to work with links and AMPScript. So a little bit about me for those who didn't join session 1. I'm a technical consultant with Devs United. I've been working with Marketing Cloud for more than 8 years, since Exact Target days. As a solutions architect, a technical architect, I did a lot of coding in AMPScript, preference centers, emails, a lot of crazy stuff. And I've been working, I'm working with Marketing Cloud, like I said, for a long time. And I live in Ohio, Cleveland. But I'm from Argentina, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so recap from session 1. AMPScript, proprietary language embedded in emails, landing pages, and embedded in Marketing Cloud, with the intent to create one-to-one subscriber messages, unique message experience. And you can use it in subject line, emails, content block, SMS messages, cloud pages, sender profiles, exclusion scripts. In this session, we're gonna focus more on email, okay? Basic syntax, we talked about this in the session 1. If you have one line of code and that line of code is basically calling a function, just as printing a variable or formatting a date, you use %% equal sign. If you have more than one line of code, for example, declaring a variable and setting the value, just as this one, use square brackets. And use just %% and the name if you are printing an attribute, a subscriber attribute, or a column in your data extension. In the data extension that you are using to send, if you do %% the name of a column, it will print that. It will just print that, okay? And then variables, we talk about variables. Variables are container of information. For example, I can contain the string Mike. Strings go in double quotes. And variables start with the ampersand sign, okay? So a variable can hold a static value, just as a name, or it can hold the result of a function, just as adding 2 numbers together, okay? So here, for example, set result equals to multiply. There is a function called multiply, and we multiply 2 numbers. The result of a function is stored in a variable. I can use a variable for something else. I can use a variable as a parameter on a function. I can use a variable to print it in an email. I can use a variable to do another math operation if I want, right? All the list of functions are available here. And I'm gonna keep this link open because we're gonna look at it in a couple of minutes. So we have all the list of functions here that we can use. And basically a function in the documentation, you see that, for example, a lookup function, it tells you what are the parameters, if they're required or not, and an example. Very, very easy to use. All right, so conditional statements. We talked about conditional statements. The conditional statements is to do something like, if something happens, then do something else, do something, like, for example, print Melissa's name. Else, which is otherwise, do something else, end of sentence. So that's a way to read an if statement, very easy. If the value that I'm holding in the name variable equals to Melissa, Melissa is a string of text, so I'm using double quotes, then print the HTML, hi Melissa. As you can see, we're combining AMPScript with HTML. We can do that. We're gonna see this in the example. Else, hi guest. I don't know who Melissa is. And the operators, we can use multiple operators, so we can use and, or. And we can use equals to and greater than, less than, just as any other programming language. So let's go towards the use case. So example use case, what we did on the first session, we had this football shop email. We wanted to print the current month's name in the subject line. We wanted to print the subscriber's first name in here. And then we wanted to print this was an abandoned cart email, display the top abandoned product sorted by unit price. And we have upcoming events like promotions or discounts, and we wanted to show the top 4 events sorted by event date. Okay, so the 2 use cases that we're gonna code in this session are these 2: display the top product and display the 4 upcoming events. So just a quick reminder of what we had. We have the email here in Marketing Cloud that is coded, and we can preview it real quick. And the only thing that we have is printing the month's name and the person's name, which we were talking about using the proper case function. For example, here Benjamin is all lowercase, and I'm using the proper case to start with a uppercase V, right? And if it's empty, I add a header, okay, the string header. The final code is going to be available in GitHub for this email, so no worry about that. And in terms of data extensions, we have 4 data extensions. We have our sending data extension, that's the abandoned basket header, which we have fake email addresses and then first name and the basket ID. And with that basket ID, we can go to the basket details and see the products that are tied to the basket. And just for the sake of simplicity for this exercise, I also add the unit price in the basket details, although that might be just in the product itself, right? So we also have a product catalog table that has all the products on our e-commerce store. So the name, the description, category, etc. And we have the list of events. So we have an event and the dates, promo code, and the event name. Okay, so that's our data extension. So part of our development methodology that we were talking about was to set up first all the dynamic information statically. Okay, so we're gonna start with the t-shirt and the product description. So I'm gonna add a comment here and say product information. Actually, I'm gonna take this out. I'm gonna use my editor quick, okay, so you can see better. And I'm gonna declare a couple of variables. So I'm gonna declare my product name. I'm gonna declare my product image URL, and I'm gonna declare my product URL, the URL to my product, and I'm gonna declare a variable called product handle. Okay. Now I'm gonna set product name. We're gonna set a static value, and I'm gonna look at the products here real quick. So I'm gonna use this first one. So my product name. I'm gonna use my product URL, image URL. We're gonna set it to this one. Then we're gonna set our product handle. Product handle is this value right here. And this handle is used in our website. The client told us that this handle, if you replace it in the URL, it's gonna go to the product detail. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this product handle, put it here, and I'm gonna set my product URL to be the concatenation. Concat, we use the function concat, and we concatenate the URL of my site with my product handle. Okay, so the first thing we do is we define the variables statically. Then we're gonna do is dynamically. Okay. So now I'm gonna go put this in my email. I'm gonna put this little AMPScript block here. Right here. Okay. And now the only thing that we need is to start putting the actual names, right? So I'm gonna search for product description, and this is I'm gonna change it for product name. Okay. So, let's see this one. Oh, it's an image. Okay. All right, let's use this. Let's use this for now. So I'm gonna print. Oh, sorry. Okay, there we go. We search for a product description, what is printing it, and we're gonna replace it with the printing the value of a variable product name. Okay, you can see here on the right. Then the Argentina t-shirt, where would this be? Maybe it's here, this one right here. Let's see. Let's look for it. This is where, when it's good to have code that is commented. It's very important. So where is it? Complete your order. Let's look at what the image. Okay, perfect. So let's look for this string. And then we're gonna replace this with printing the image URL. So we use a v function and we say product image URL. As you can see, I'm using friendly variable names so I can remember what I'm setting the variables without really having to look, although sometimes I look. And then they get it before it's gone. This one right here, this one is gonna point to the product URL, right? Now remember, with links, we're gonna use a redirect to function. This function is used to, when you are using dynamically set like variables, you're setting a variable, a URL dynamically to a variable, you need to use a redirect to. So Marketing Cloud appends all the context information of the message correctly. Okay, so if you use v, it's just, in some cases it doesn't work correctly. So always, every time you have a dynamically generated URL, use a redirect to function. Okay, so this one is product URL. So let's go ahead and see if this email renders correctly. It renders well. It should go to the site. Okay, so now, see, as you can see, now I don't have to worry about print. I know that this is gonna work. Now I worry about how do I get it dynamically. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Go here. Let's say this. All right, so dynamically displaying data. So what we are going to use is a function called lookup order rows, right? So, but let's talk first about the lookup rows function. The lookup rows function is a function that, given a data extension, this one in the right is my data extension, for example, is going to return a row set, which is a collection of data, right? It's almost like returning the lookup rows function. Think about it returns a spreadsheet, okay? Spreadsheet with data, with column names and data and cells. Lookup order rows is the same as lookup rows, but it returns the data in the row set order, okay? In the order that I'm defining. If I'm saying, give me all the data sorted by first name ascending, it's gonna return that, okay? The row count is a function that I use to verify the data. So every time I do a lookup rows, it's a good practice to make sure that I have more than one row, or I have enough rows for the logic to work. And that's done using the row count function. Imagine that if I don't have that, what happens if I get zero rows and I'm trying to get a value from something that's null? The email is gonna break, right? So it's gonna display an error. So always use row counts to verify that I have more than one row. Even if you think that your data is consistent, it's always good to have a failsafe like that. So in this case, my row count is going to return 3. That's a result of calling the row count function, and it will all come down to there when I show you the code, right? Then I'm saying row. The row function, that's the next function that I'm going to use. So remember, I have my row set using lookup rows. And I can store that in a variable. Then I'm going to call the row function to get the row, to get the actual row that I want. And then I call the field function to get the one field that I want, to get to a cell, right? Because if you think about what is a cell is a combination of a row and the column, and the field is my column. So what we are going to do in this exercise is we are going to go ahead and retrieve data from my abandoned basket details to get the highest unit price for that basket. And then I'm going to retrieve the information for that product ID. And then I should be able to print that. Okay, so remember the basket header, I have this in an Excel, it's easier to explain, right? The basket header, that extension is the extension we're using to send emails, right? It's our abandoned basket email, that extension. We have a basket ID. With this basket ID, we're gonna go get the basket ID here, and I'm gonna get the unit price. And with this product ID, we're gonna get the product name, the price, the image URL, and the handle. Okay. So I'm gonna go look real quick. If you guys want to look at this, we can look at the lookup order rows function. Okay. And as you can see, it takes 4 parameters, right? Or 5. And the parameters are the name of that extension, how many results do I want to return, the sorting by which column, the column to use to match the data in my data extension, and the value for that. Okay, so I'm going to show you in an easy example here. So I'm going to create a variable called abandoned cart details. Okay, and I'm going to say lookup order rows. And this is how it works. Where do I want to look? What's the name of my data extension, right? Abandon. I want to look in abandon basket details. Okay. How many rows do I want? I want 1 row because I'm showing 1 product. What's my sorting criteria? Unit price, desk, descending, the highest unit price for that. How are you going to match it? Well, I'm going to use a product ID column in my abandoned basket details, and I'm going to match it with the PID column, basket ID. Basket ID column and basket ID column. Okay, basket ID and basket ID. So basket ID and basket ID of my sendable, that extension. Remember, my data extension has a column called basket ID, so all I do is basket ID. That's going to return my abandoned cart details. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm gonna do, okay. Now I'm gonna say, okay, if row count of my abandoned cart details is greater than 0, okay, if I have rows that I'm gonna show, then what I can start doing is I can say, okay, set, I'm gonna create another variable, and I'm gonna say set cart detail equals to, give me the first row. I only return a row set with one row, so I'm gonna call the row function. The first parameter is a row set, abandoned cart details, and the second parameter is what is the row index that you want, from 1 to X. You know, if I have 100 rows, how, you know, which one is the one I want? If I want the first row, I 1. That's it. Now I have the row, right? So if we look at the Excel, I have this guy, right? In an example, I have this guy. Okay. But now I want one each of the cells individually on each variable, right? Very easy. We have these guys here, set product name. No, sorry. There's one small problem. In the abandoned cart detail, I have the product ID, right? The PID. So now with that PID, I'm gonna go retrieve the PID. Cart detail, give me the PID column. Okay, this is how we call field. Cart detail is my row, right? And now I identify, okay, give me, for that row, give me the value of the column PID. So almost like doing this, right? I have this row, give me the value for this one, for PID. Now with PID, what I had to do? I had to go and look at the products, right? So I'm gonna skip declaring variables. It's not bad practice, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip. So I'm gonna create a variable called products, and I'm gonna set it to lookup rows. Give me the rows. Where do I gonna look? Product catalog. By what? I wanna look by PID. And this one is product ID, okay? Now I have all my products. And now I go do the condition again, right? Row count, do I verify that I have everything? Now I wanna set, give me the first row, let's call it product row. And then give me the first row. And now that I have the first row, I can go ahead and say set product name equals to field product row product name set product image URL equals to field product row. See how this one is called. Image URL, and then set product handle equals to field product row. Give me the value for the cell, for the column handle. And then this one I can just copy, right? Because I already have this. Boom. All right, right? So here's walk you through real quick. First of all, we look order rows in abandoned basket details. I want to return the top first by unit price descending, and I want to match by the basket ID column with the basket ID column that I have in my sendable extension. If I have abandoned cart details, now I'm gonna go with that cart detail. I'm gonna get the first row, and I'm gonna get the product ID for that row, and then I'm gonna go and look at the products details. So I do a lookup rows. Now I don't need to order anything, so I just call lookup rows. Lookup rows is the name of that extension, the name of the column to match, and the name of the value for the column. So product ID that we just got from abandoned cart basket detail. If I have more than one product, I get the first row. That's all I need, the first one. And I start printing product name, image, handle, and then I concatenate. And then, remember, it's a row. I get the first row, and then the field is I pass the first parameter is the actual row that I just got. The second parameter is the name of a column. Okay. So now, if I'm lucky and I coded this without validating it, this might work. Disclaimer: there's a chance that there is an error. It's possible. There you go. So product name, product row. Let's see. Files name. So the name of my column is name, right? So I'm passing, as you can see, product name. Very easy to identify. When I go here, name. Something has to fail. I mean, if I get it right, you guys won't believe me that I'm doing this live. So next, let's preview. There you go. So I have one product, I have another one, and another one, and I'm previewing. Now here, I'm not talking about, what happens if I don't have any rows? Should I hide this or not? I mean, that's very easy to do if I wanted to. All I have to do is to put this row count function before my HTML. So it will look something like this, right? If row count, basically this guy. Here. It can be something like that. One way to do it, right? And then you put your HTML for product. Another way to do it would be to, to set a variable called empty. And then if you don't find like a value, for example, here, you can do else. Sorry. Else empty equals false, for example. I don't know. And then here you do the same. If empty equals true, then you don't show it, right? So there's a couple of ways to do that. Maybe as an exercise, if you guys want to try, you can see if you want to add a little bit of more AMPScript to validate the scenario where what happens if I don't have products, right? If I don't have data. So we don't show that content in the email or whatnot. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about for loops. Okay. So one of our use cases was to print. We'll go back real quick. To print the top upcoming events sorted by event date. Okay. So that's easy. We can print a for loop, right? Very similar to retrieving the rows. We look up order rows, but retrieving, but with a for loop, looping through a collection and printing. There are two options to use a for loop. One is combining with HTML. You put your for loop. That's what we're gonna do here. You print your HTML. The second option is just printing the code in one block. Okay. So let's go now for this one, though. We're gonna have to do that a little bit closer to where our HTML is. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go back. So we have to start writing our AMPScript around here, and we could probably take this out and put it in a content block so it's reusable. Maybe we want to use this in other emails. I would recommend doing that, but in this case, we're just gonna do it right here, right? So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go around here. This is where the kind of like the HTML starts to print. Okay, and 1, event 2, and 3, event 4. Okay, so I'm gonna start printing around here. Okay. So the first thing I have to do is to do get my events, and I'm gonna say lookup order rows in my events that extension. Look by event date ascending. Oh, give me 4 events, right? Give me top 4 events. Event day ascending, and match by wait a minute. I don't know, right? So here's a problem. If you look at the lookup order rows, there's a require function that is like fields to use in the word clause. Which field am I going to use in the word clause in my event? I don't have anything, right? So here's a trick that usually you do is you put an additional column called query and you default it to a value, okay? So in Content Builder, I have here my data extension, I have all my records. I'm gonna clear all my records. I'm gonna add a new attribute called query. It's a number, default value is 1. Boom, and then I can go ahead and re-import my data real quickly. Choose a file, documents, training, session 1, data, events, see if this works. Overwrite is a comma, boom, boom, boom. Everything matches. All right, let's see if that works. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna pretend that that query value exists. So I'm gonna say query equals 1, and now I can get all my rows, right? So that's something that you should learn, that to analyze, can I do lookups or do I need an auxiliary column to do the lookup? What's the condition? In this case, we add 1, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is if row count events is greater than 0, then now this is when I start my for loop, because I need to iterate through the collection, okay? So what I'm gonna do actually is gonna go ahead, I'm gonna move this a lower level. I'm gonna talk about this real quick, but here, I'm gonna put it here. So this is what we're gonna do now for the sake of a little bit of time, but I'm gonna, I wanna walk you through a little bit of a solution, okay? So I'm gonna move this here. I'm gonna go ahead and put my for statement here. The first value is a value called a variable name. I'm gonna call it index. I'm gonna start in 1, and I'm gonna end in how many rows I have, right? Because in the case I have 3 rows, maybe I wanna print 3 events, okay? And then all I do here is I'm gonna say set, let's see, sorry. Event name, event date, and event promo code. Set event name equals to, first we need to get the row events index, right? So this way, if you're reading the for statement, the first time is gonna be 1, the next time is gonna be 2, the next time is gonna be 3, and the next time is gonna be 4, because I have 4 rows, okay? So I'm making this dynamic. I get the event, and now I can say, okay, give me the event name. Event name, I think it was called. Give me the event promo code. And give me the, we call it event date. In this case, I want to format my event date. So I'm going to nest 2 columns. So I'm going to format the result of my event date. I'm going to use it as a parameter for my format function. And I think it's month, day, let's say like that. I'm going to format it so it doesn't show the time. I just want to show the dates, okay? So now I have everything ready to print, right? So if we go to this example, all I have to do is event name, when, I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna put the date. we can actually save a little bit. This to make it a little more elegant and clean. We can choose to like that, and then just get rid of this. Okay, so it looks a little more cleaner, as you can see. And we're formatting here because again, we're returning the value already, and then the promo code, right? So I want to do promo code. Okay. So if I were to run this code, the for statement is going to run, it's going to assign all the variables, and nothing is going to print here. It's going to print the last value, right? Because I'm not nesting the HTML with my code. So I need to nest the HTML with my code. How am I going to do that? Get rid of this. When I finish printing my code, we close our statement. Okay. So if for statement, print, next index, and if. Okay. I'm going to delete this part, and I'm going to leave this just for the purpose of an example that I'm going to do. And again, let's see if we got data. Hold on. People might think that this failed, and it's possible, but it didn't. Okay, sometimes Marketing Cloud catches your results. So, okay, so boom, we're gonna paste our code. We can see our code is all here. As you can see, I'm leaving these two, event 3, event 4. I'm gonna explain to you some considerations with the for loop statements and HTML. There we go. Aliadas should sell. There's a little formatting. 20% off across our brands. Nike sale, and Man City FIFA 20 sale, right? So it's a little formatting. I should have probably format this to have, yeah, this guy right here, right? So this guy right here, I think it goes here. Okay. If we go back. That should help. Yeah, there we go. Now, what happens? My events in my HTML were in 4 columns, were in 2 columns, one here, one here, one here, one here. I put it all one after the other one. So this is why it's very important when you're coding emails that are dynamic to know the use case, because look at this. The way the HTML is coded is there is a cell for event 1 and 2, and there was another cell for event 3 and 4. So now in my for statement, I basically have to include functionality to close and open these tags based on if I'm looking at product index 1 or product index 2, if it's odd or even number, or what happens if I have only 3 products, and my HTML becomes like messy, right? So this would have been easier if we're using some sort of responsive framework. Well, it stacks, you know, depending on the width. So then I could print one after the other one, and then it will show no matter what. But because I have this table row here tag, it adds a little bit of complexity to my code. Now I'm gonna upload this case like that, like it is right now here in GitHub, and I would like for you guys to try to fix it, okay? It's very common, by the way, this type of situation when you have to look through a collection and print HTML, and the HTML that you are given is not thought through to allow. So your AMPScript ends up being a little more confusing, right? And more hard to read. So it's very important to keep alignment between the development team and the business team and you know the creative team, because otherwise you're gonna add more overhead, right? And this is a simple example, but as you can see, like I will have to code a little. So I'm gonna let you guys take that as an assignment and try to fix up, you know, this email so it actually displays one here, one here, one here, and one here, and 2 here and 2 here. So anyway, All right. Just to finalize before we go into some questions, I'm sure there might be several questions, and I want to leave some time there. AMPScript functions, okay? So there is a function called content block by key. Sorry, that you can store a reusable piece of content in Marketing Cloud, and you can call it by the key, and that renders and returns the code that you have. The way that AMPScript works is that it actually renders all at the same time when you render. So if you're making content area blocks calls that has AMPScript inside, it's going to run that AMPScript, and it runs it in order from top to bottom. So how to make functions? Imagine, for example, that you have multi-language emails, and you want to print the title of an email in 10 different languages, right? Yeah, you can use dynamic content, that's great. But sometimes you have a lot of AMPScript in your email. You can't really use dynamic content. What do? You can set the variables on the top, then call the content block by key. And then in your content block by key, you can use the variables that you set outside, because AMPScript renders as one big file. So this is a hack to create your own AMPScript functions. Okay, so this is a good thing, a good practice that we should do, and this is a good example, like translating content. I'm gonna repeat this function all over. I don't wanna call this AMPScript like, I don't know, imagine it's 10 lines of AMPScript all over my email if I'm printing an email, if I'm rendering an email. One best practice, never use content block by ID unless you are commenting where that content block is. Imagine if I go in, somebody, your coworker goes in and looks at this email and says, content block by ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 300. And then they go here and say, okay, which one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 300? I have no clue, unless somebody put the path of the content. So you can use a content block key, the unique key that you can give to a content block, or the path. You can specify the path to that content. If you use content block by ID and you don't put a comment, you're a mean person, to your coworkers at least. Links on AMPScript. Remember, redirect to. Every time you're pulling a URL from a column or you are setting it dynamically, the redirect to function is crucial to wrap that link correctly and encode it at all the parameters that you need for context. We're talking about job ID, subscriber cases. Very important. And then Cloud Pages URL. If you are using Cloud Pages in Marketing Cloud, you can use a Cloud Pages URL function. You can set this attribute the ID of a cloud page, or you can pass multiple parameters, query parameters. And this, what it does, it actually wraps the URL, it encodes it, it encrypts the query string, so the user doesn't see it. And then you can retrieve it in your cloud page just by doing %% key. It would, or like, sorry, query parameter or request parameter function, it will retrieve it. So I wanted to leave some time for questions. If we want to review, we have a couple, about 10 minutes. If we want to review a little bit more on the code, we can. I hope this was clear. Just remember lookup rows. Think about it, look at an Excel spreadsheet. The first thing we need is get me the row set. The second thing is give me that row, which is my row here. And the third thing is the third thing to do is give me the cell. Boom. And that's using the field function. If you remember that, you're gonna be fine. And then the fourth statement, remember the use case to think through what is HTML looks like and how is it coded, how is it designed. We have cases also in the past where the email is coded responsive, but they code in a way where elements are duplicated, and there is a hide and show function based on mobile, and that makes it really tricky with AMPScript. You have to duplicate AMPScript. And the other thing to consider is this content block by key is great, but there could be a performance limitation if you have, I don't know, 400 content block by name or by key calls in your email. Every time you're calling it, if you're not caching, there is a way to cache it, but if you're not caching it, the response, because it's variable, then it hits your performance. It will hit your performance a little bit if you have a ton of this, right? So I don't know if there are any questions from the chat.
Hi, Pato. Yeah, I just sent you an additional question.
Yeah. So can you demonstrate how to grab fields from different data extensions again? Yeah, I think you're referring to this one at the top that we have here. So the first thing we do is the abandoned cart details. We look at all the rows sorted by unit price and by that basket ID. Then we grab that first row because we're only returning one. And then with that row, I call the field function. The first parameter is a row, the actual row. And the second parameter is what's the name of a field or the column that I want. And then we store that in a variable. And then with a variable, I can do a second lookup. Okay. I hope that's clear. You can test it. I'll put this code in GitHub very soon. So, and I'll also update. I'm updating this CSV file. So if you guys created that extensions, you can just delete it and recreate it again. Any other questions? We have about 9 minutes. You see anything? Sorry. The last parameter, where do you get basket? Okay, so that's a good question. So remember the data extension I'm using to send. So the question is, where do you get basket ID? The last parameter in this lookup. Where does it come from? Basket ID is a column in my sendable data extension, right? So the data extension that I'm choosing to send my email. So if we go to my email, the data extension that I'm choosing to preview my email or to send also the email, right? If I'm deploying this email, is my the extensions, trainings, abandoned basket header. And that header has a basket ID. See, so I'm going to choose Benjamin. So all I have to do in my code is just write basket ID, because in the context of the email, that's my sendable data extension. I can just write basket ID, and AMPScript will interpret it. And for that record, for this contact, it's going to retrieve 4. Okay. So there is another way to do this, if you don't know that you may have a column called basket ID, because maybe your data changes, there is a function called attribute value that helps you for that, so your email doesn't error. I would just recommend looking at the documentation. They have examples of that. But if you know your data structure, you always want to have the basket ID. You would just write basket ID. Any other questions?
Looks like that's it, Pato.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the 2 sessions. I'm gonna upload this to GitHub. We are going to upload the recordings to YouTube eventually very soon. The PDF of a deck is also on the session folder. So in session 1, there should be a PDF with the first presentation. And there's also instructions on how to deploy the data environment that you need to do this in the README for session 1. So I will start with session 1. In session 3, can you remind me, sorry, when is that? Is that next Wednesday or this Friday? Can you remind me when that is? I don't know if you can hear me, sorry, but we have a session number 3. It's going to be about server-side JavaScript. And that's going to be, I believe, this Friday, I think.
Yes, that is scheduled for next Friday.
for the 17 or the 10?
The 17th.
The 17. So next week, next Friday, we're going to talk about server-side JavaScript. So this one is a little more advanced, you know. So if you're already familiar with AMPScript, you're a little bit familiar with server-side JavaScript, Javier is going to walk you through how to, you know, use server-side JavaScript, what are the differences between AMPScript, really cool use cases that he'll share. So that's next Friday. And then we have one more session that Agustin is going to host about journey builder activities. So we do a lot of journey builder integration work. He's going to cover the basics on how, you know, what tips and considerations you should have when integrating journey builder. So thanks everyone for joining today, and I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be in touch. Thanks everyone.